You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 476, our breakdown of the fourth episode of the Bad Batch Season 2, entitled Faster. It was a episode that conjured up some memories of, I don't know, a little movie called The Phantom Menace, and maybe a little video game called Star Wars Racer, for anybody that remembers that game. And it was okay. I think we have a lot to talk about in this as well. There were some good moments and some good character development moments as well. So, but speaking of good character, Jonesy's with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
Albert Scaleback.
Did you like the last thing we got? That was probably one of the more interesting things that we got in this episode.
You just said it was super interesting, and then you said the most interesting was her last name that was very descriptive of her species.
Well, yes. Yes, that's very true. It can be all things, though. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you tonight?
I'm good. There was this episode it felt like it was over. Maybe that was the whole reason it was called Faster, but it seemed like it was over like at 18 minutes or whatever. If you look at the runtime total, it was only like, I don't know, 18, 19 minutes. So
right.
Pretty short episode, but
it was actually kind of enjoyable though. I mean, it wasn't anything super deep, but there were a few moments in her. I'm hoping, I'm not ready to call it filler quite yet, but I'm hoping that we get payoffs a little bit later on, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. So, but I thought it was enjoyable though.
Yeah. Now, yeah, we'll get into all that here in a little bit. But before we do have a little bit of news because, so as you guys know, I'm still coming off the high that we had for Monday night when we did the live stream shortly after the release of the season 3 full-length trailer. I guess minute and 30 seconds. But that was released Monday night. We did a live stream on that. Had a crap ton of people that came out for the live stream and recording. So thanks to everyone who did that on Monday night. But we did not get a chance to talk about the key art that was released. And you used some of it, I guess, in the title cards for that episode. But I thought we could pull this up too, because I just want to kind of quickly go over it. Your astute observations pointed out something very early on, and that was the knee rockets that we can see right here.
That's right. He's got the rockets on the knees, just like Boba Fett style. So that was a lot of fun to see. This is actually just really cool art. I mean, very action oriented. The cape, or whatever you want to call it, on fire, some holes, built into it.
Mm-hmm.
Grogu in tow there. Just a lot of fun on this key art. Love it a lot.
So
and it made for a great poster too when it was more vertical as well, more in the portrait mode.
Yeah, and if I scroll down here, you can kind of see. Here's the other.
Yeah, this is the actual poster art. Yeah. They literally just turn him sideways in the lair. Yeah,
they did. Yeah, that's fine. So any thoughts or on whether or not this is pulled from a particular scene in season 3?
I'm going to go with no, probably not. I think this is probably just fancy poster art, much like a lot of it else, elsewhere it is. But it's still, I mean, it exhibits a lot of just fun and excitement and energy in it. And I think that's exactly what we need. And again, it's setting the tone for the series, for the season. Mm-hmm. It's going to be action packed. It's going to, have a lot of explosions, clearly. But I mean, no, it's going to have a lot of this, just escapism into it. And I think this is really capturing that well. And the conflict that we hear and some of the bylines that we got on the trailer, I think this is really just fitting it all well. And again, it just gets you stoked. That's the whole point of artwork.
Yeah,
is to just get you visually entranced of what you can expect. And I think this sets the tone really well.
Yeah, I agree. I like the art. It's always good when they release this stuff like this. It gets you excited, gets you thinking. I'd like to see him at some point get the little knee rockets, just because it's been kind of one of these things, this recurring theme, I guess, with this particular series, is that every season, every few episodes, he keeps adding more and more to his collection of
the real question is, when is Grogu going to get some knee rockets?
Yeah, right. Or a jetpack. That's what we're waiting for, actually. The helmet, I think, is really the big one that we're waiting for.
He's not getting, Albert?
What's that?
A lightsaber.
Ooh, too soon to call, my friend.
Shots fired.
I think he's going to have it. I guarantee you that little kid whips that lightsaber out at some point during season 3. The other thing that happened was they did release the official tagline, which is not a whole lot. It just says the Mandalorian will cross paths with old allies and make new enemies as he and Grogu continue their journey together.
Yeah, so
That
what kind of
seems-
new enemies do we think he's going to find? I mean, he's got no shortage of them these days. Even friends, he's got more frenemies than I think anybody we've ever met. So,
Yeah.
any ideas of what that actually means, or is it just superfluous at this point?
Well, the only new enemies I think would be extensions of the Empire in some way, maybe would be one, and then the other would be just these clans, right? Maybe enemies at first. That's probably not. It's probably misleading in some way. I mean, he's always going to be. There's always going to be people after him, whether they're bounty hunters or Gotras or who knows, gangsters going after him at this point. So I think one of those probably would kind of fit in there. Let's see what else. Oh, so what do you want to talk about? Another thing too. The directors were announced, and I did not get a chance to go back and look at some of this stuff, but we've got some people returning. So officially now, we've got Rick Famuyiwa. We know who he is, and he did a few episodes of let's see, last season 1 as well.
Right.
And then what was the other thing he did? I'm trying to remember. There was something else that he had done, but maybe not. So then we got Rachel Morrison, who was the Black Panther cinematographer, Minari filmmaker Lee Isaac Chung. I want your thoughts on some of these. Mandalorian actor Carl Weathers, which is kind of him returning.
Right.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse's Peter Ramsey, and returning Mando director Bryce Dallas Howard, who I think probably everybody's really looking forward to because I think she's been able to really put in some killer episodes for us.
Yeah, I think Rick and Bryce Dallas Howard, I think, are the two probably superstars here because of the episodes that they've given us have been absolutely stellar, and they've hit and they've really captured exactly what you expect out of Book of Boba Fett or Mandalorian or whatever it is. They've really delivered on those episodes, and so I would expect that to continue.
Yeah.
And again, just strong showings each one. I'm really interested about Rachel Morrison though, with the cinematography of Black Panther, which of course was just magnificent in that regard. And so I'm really curious to see what she brings to the Mandalorian, and to see if we notice the stylistic change when we look at the some of the trailer. I think we get a little bit of a different tone. It was difficult just to tell if it was tone or if it's truly going to be a very different kind of cinematic difference, right? And what we've seen so far. And I think with Mandalore, I think that's really important to capture. I think this is something that could be really unique and really an identifier that really ingrains this season as something truly unique for the Mandalorian beyond the story, but the visual aspect of it as well. And I'm really excited to see her and to see what she brings to the series as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think they've done a really good job of bringing the big screen to the small screen with the series in particular. And a lot of it is credited to some of the people that they've had. I mean, they've had the John Favreau's and some of the folks you've already named here. So I think that's going to continue. And I think you're right. I think bringing her somebody like that will give you that, lend itself to really painting that picture of what Mandalore looks like and giving you kind of different shots and then that sort of thing. So I think we're presuming that she's going to be doing any of those episodes, but nonetheless, right, something like that is going to be well received for a series like this.
Exactly. What do you think about Peter Ramsey and Lee Isaac Chung? I know the name Lee Isaac Chung, but I can't quite figure it out. I'm not familiar with what Minari is, but I've heard the name. You know much about them?
No, I don't. But here's the thing I would say, and we brought this up when Robert Rodriguez was announced for the Book of Boba Fett and some of the other directors, honestly, for some of the other shows that's been done for Disney Plus or just in Marvel in general. Success at the big screen doesn't always mean success on the smaller screen, and vice versa, right? We've seen a lot of times directors struggle to kind of do something smaller on a smaller scale, smaller budget, whatever it is. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons as to why that is. So it's always interesting to see these new folks in here. But it's really hard if we've never seen them do television before. It's a different format, it's a different medium. So it is a little bit challenging for some folks, and other folks seem to excel at it. So unfortunately, I've not seen anything from Lee Isaac Chung and Peter Ramsey. Well, I've seen Into the Spider-Verse for sure, which was awesome, but that was animation.
For a lot of folks, Into the Spider-Verse is people's Spider-Man at this point.
That is the Spider-Man, right. And now we're talking about 2D animation, right? Well, technically 2D, 3D, but
Yeah.
it's a little different even then, right? You're not directing humans and that sort of thing. So
Right.
it's all good stuff. I mean, they're bringing in some people with some very diverse backgrounds, which could turn out to be kind of really successful. We'll see.
So what was really interesting about like Into the Spider-Verse is that there were interesting concepts in there. Like, so as the series, as the show goes on, the frame rate they use for Miles Morales increases over the course of the show. So there were interesting things like that I'm curious if there's any creativity that comes into Mandalorian. I mean, I'm not expecting anything crazy or wild. I mean, that was pretty noticeable. And so imagine it might be a little more subtle, but I like the different infusion of different potential ideas going into it. And so when you see a name like Peter Ramsey and you see what they did,
Yeah.
it's kind of exciting to see what's possible. I mean, because your mind opens up a little bit saying, oh man, they did a lot of interesting things. And,
Right.
it was really successful for a reason. How does that translate into Star Wars? How does it translate into something like The Mandalorian in a series?
That's a good point. Again, not to go back to Book of Boba Fett, but that was one of the things that was really intriguing about somebody like Robert Rodriguez. He's got this blueprint. He's almost got a very defined fingerprint in terms of how he tells his stories as a director, as a writer. And we were looking for that in the Book of Boba Fett, but that would be interesting if they did kind of figure out a way to weave some of those technical creativity aspects that he brought to Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse without getting too far away, right? We don't want it to distract or pull away from what we're used to already seeing, because you don't want it to stick out like a sore thumb, but subtle things would be kind of cool like that.
So do you think Bryce Dallas Howard is doing the Jedi episode? Let's just speculate. Of what we've seen so far, which one do you think Bryce Dallas Howard is going to have her fingerprints all over?
That would be, I don't know. Like they've really given her they've given her episodes where it was very character centric focus and some deep like conversations between characters. So I'm trying to think where that would even be in this one. Maybe
Yeah. I mean, Bo-Katan. I mean, the Bo-Katan episodes come to mind really quickly, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what she really did. So I don't know. I think they probably just keep that going, honestly, rather than bringing her into that. Who did the Order 66? It was somebody new last year.
Oh
that
gosh,
did those.
I can't remember.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I would say that there's probably a good likelihood that she will stick with some like the Bo-Katan stuff, since she's already kind of in that wheelhouse. It seems to be what she's done. I think she's done a really good job with some of the action sequences too. So when you think about a ton of Mandalorians flying around in some of those scenes that we got, like she's proven she can knock that out all day long. So I'd love to see her continue that work as well.
Yeah, some people just kind of get it, that they get a job or they get a role with a certain series or a certain set of characters, and they just really get it and they fit right in. And Bryce Dallas Howard is just that's her with this series. She's really
Right.
encapsulated and really captured that magic with her episodes. And again, you just hope that train keeps rolling.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty much everything that happened. There's a ton of stuff that happened in some of the rumor stuff, but we're not going to get into all that tonight. So let me close that and let's see. Hey, before we go any further, we've got some folks in the live chat tonight with us.
Oh, we have a lot of folks on the live chat, including some folks, longtime friends that are coming around.
Already taking cheap shots at you.
They are. Yeah, thank you. Jonathan, JJ Skywalker, Nase, Sky, Dale, Hard Countered, Steph, Jason is out there as Alaron. I don't know what he's playing in his mind. But anyway, so, and then Lauren and Rob, of course. Thank you, everyone, to come out. If you're listening to this, we do a live stream every Sunday and Thursday, 9 p.m. Central, and you get to see us, and sometimes you get to see Lauren as well. And we get to come up here and talk Star Wars, and we get to interact with y'all in the live chat. So we hope you'll come out and check us out, cantinacast.com/YouTube.
Yeah, I did throw up Alaron's comment because he is family and we love him, but that was pretty funny. Okay.
I have a response to, so Jason made a comment about, wow, Silent Bob didn't age well because I've got a hat backwards, my hair's out.
Yeah.
But I have a comment back to him.
Here it comes.
To quote Jason Mewes, to quote, Jay. But it is totally inappropriate and not PG-13. And so I will refrain and I will text it to him later, and it will be very funny in my head. So
shots fired.
Yes.
Shots fired.
What else we have tonight, Albert?
I see some Patreon folks in here too.
We do, and we actually have a new Patreon, Uncle
What?
Leon. Yeah, your
Uncle
Uncle Leon
Leon
came in. Yeah,
No relation to Uncle Harlow.
Right. Or Uncle, what did I call him before by accident?
Melvin, I think you said Uncle Melvin.
Uncle
Melton,
Melton.
that's who it is. Yeah,
I don't know.
he's the other. He's the other brother of her.
He's Harlow's brother, is Melton.
He's Harlow's brother, right?
Sincere thanks to Uncle Leon, who joined the Now Part of the Tribe tier, which is amazing. So in our Now Part of the Tribe now, we have Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante. I swear I haven't been drinking. Risk, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, and now Uncle Leon. And the Delusions of Grandeur tier, of course, Rod, Kathy, and Hard Counter, many of which are in the chat with us tonight. Thank you all for your continued support. If you'd like to check out Patreon, we do post the Patreon previews for when we do a Patreon. We do post those on the regular feed, so we usually give you a good 20, 30 minutes of that. Go check those out. But if you want to hear the full episodes, cantinacast.com/Patreon will get you everything you need to know. Everything starts at just a couple of bucks a month, so there's kind of something there for everyone. I still have Chewie and the Pogs pinned.
Okay, it's coming down soon, so
it is coming down eventually. Yes.
Yeah.
Are we past Three Kings Day? Yeah, well, we're past that. So
we're waiting
holidays
for
are over.
The third violation of copyright infringement, and then we'll take it down. So we're on 2, so could be any day now, folks.
But huge thanks to everyone. We'd really appreciate it, and hope y'all want to go check it out.
Yep. Well, shall we talk about faster?
Let's dig in, man.
More intense? Okay. All right. So first off, I got to just get this off my chest. I freaking love the amount of GoTals that were in this episode. Like, they brought the GoTals back in force in this episode.
Man, and back with a vengeance.
They were. Who was it? Was it Chris? Was my boy on this when we were talking about it last season? He's not here tonight.
Oh, you had several people that were always chasing GoTals for you. Last season it was like a game, man. It was like, where's Waldo? It's like, where's GoTal?
Yep.
Like, everybody was like scanning the screen just for you. I mean, you inspired millions,
at least millions of people to look for GoTals. Yeah. And on top of that, they started with this episode. Like, the opening shot is a GoTal out of the gate. I mean, just pulling at my heartstrings here.
Yeah, I think we got 3 throughout the episode, something like that.
Maybe 4 or 5. Yeah, I mean, it was the same one, I think, but that's usually the case.
How do you know? They don't all look alike. They're very unique in their own ways.
No, they all look alike. Okay, so no, in all seriousness, give me your opening thoughts, I guess, on this episode and what worked for you and what did not.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. On the surface, it feels like you could view it as a filler episode, right? It is not a filler episode as far as I'm concerned right now. I think it has the potential to maybe be, but there were moments in there with Sid, I think in particular, that this could be an episode we look back on and we could say that this was a turning point for Sid, of where we actually knew where her loyalties lie and what is going through her head and how she views the Bad Batch, and maybe how she views Omega more specifically, but at least the team as a whole. And so I'm not ready to write this off as a filler episode. I thought it was a fun episode, actually. I thought it was actually pretty well done. The pacing was good. Like you said, it was relatively short, comparatively. We're usually getting about between 22 and 26 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit short, but I think that was okay with this pacing. I thought the voice acting in this was actually incredibly fun, with Ben Schwartz, Ernie Hudson making an appearance. I mean, you can't go wrong with those two guys. It's just so much fun to hear those voices. They sound so familiar. And, Teo was just, I mean, I was rolling with Teo. I was laughing pretty much most of this episode. It was really silly of me, but I couldn't help it. But I mean, there was a lot to enjoy. It was just an enjoyable, entertaining episode. Not a lot of depth to it, but just fun. I just enjoyed it. It was just solid. It was just good.
Yep. So I have some of the same show notes for myself, but
I was just reading off of yours. My bad.
Did I have those up there?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh my gosh, I was like, crap! I didn't mean to do that.
I don't know if you know this, but I joke around a little bit.
Sometimes.
I'm not very funny, but I joke around.
Right. Not mutually exclusive at all. Okay, so the voice acting. Let me just kind of reinforce that a little bit. So Michelle Ang, I think we just kind of take her for granted right at this point, but I thought she did a really good job voice acting in this one, even though she did have some smaller parts. And you already talked about, also Rhea Perlman, right? As Sid. I mean, she's 74 years old, and this woman is still doing, I think, a really good job as a voice actor. So God bless her. Hope she keeps on going. And then, Ernie Hudson, who we all know from, he will always be the guy from Ghostbusters, right?
Right.
And he's got a huge history of movies, and he's done just about everything you can think of. Ben Schwartz as Teo. So Ben Schwartz, if anybody doesn't know, if you've seen the Sonic movies, he's the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog. And he brought a layer of not only just, I mean, the writing was good, right? The writing was, I thought, this was one of the funnier episodes of Star Wars anything I've seen in a while. Like I was actually literally genuinely, sincerely laughing at some of the jokes, and most of it was coming from Ben Schwartz's portrayal of Teo.
Right.
Not only was it the writing, but he just has a way of doing comedic timing through voice acting. You see it a lot in the Sonic movies if you go watch those. But again, in here, there were some really great moments of just his inflections and when he comes in and the timing of it all just worked so perfectly, professional through and through on that. So I
And
thought,
of course, Parks and Recreation, I think, is really where he got his major start as well. Yeah.
a breakout, I guess, more than anything.
Right.
Yeah. So I thought that was really great. It was a good episode, I think, for both Tech and for Sid. I think we learned a lot about kind of their characters in different ways. So I think that was good from a character development perspective. The sound and everything, again, I mean, I don't want to keep gushing about it because it sounds like we're just, shills, but it was really good again, especially when we get into the tunnels and all of that. It was just some of the best, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more, but just killer all the way through. I actually enjoyed like the racing aspects of it. Like if you think about the Phantom Menace, right, I would look at that as more like American streetcar, muscle car racing. And this had more of like this Japanese, streetcar element to it, where it wasn't about the V8s and the V10s and these massive engines, but more about the tech, no pun intended, more about the tech that goes into it, the smaller, nimbler cars, right? Of course, they had weapons and all that. We'll get into that here a little bit, but just the way the elements of the race itself were more, and it even had like that neon Tokyo vibe going on when they were going through the tunnels and you can see all the lights on the inside. So I did kind of like that different take on racing in Star Wars, because I think it's very quick and very easy to just look at that and go, this is just a rehash of, the pod race in
it's so funny because I actually viewed this more like akin to Mario Kart. And that's a positive, by the way. I love Mario Kart. But it kind of felt like Mario Kart with some of the antics that they could do. They could get away with practically anything, and again, you had the light brights or bright lights and the different tasks you had to do with getting enough speed to go around, make sure you didn't fall. I mean, it was just insane fun.
Yeah. So all those things worked really well for me. I think for me also, generally speaking, the episode, again, wasn't as deep. Probably, and I want to be clear. We said this very early on. We're not expecting every one of these episodes to be huge, monumental, watershed moments.
Yeah, 16 episodes. You're not going to get it every single time, right?
Exactly. And I think the only thing that we would ask for is that we at least find the episodes entertaining and them kind of give us some kind of development in some way. It doesn't have to be, again, on that main storyline. It doesn't need to be a part of the main story thread. I do like these kinds of moments where we learn a little bit more about Sid's past and maybe put a little bit more doubt into where we've gotten very comfortable with her. Because I think if you think about it, and not to kind of bleed right into the breakdown, but when we were first introduced to Sid, there was a bit of skepticism, right, from us as well as the Bad Batch, and at one point they were going to leave, right? They were already done with her. They didn't want to be a part of this anymore, right. And she kind of brought them back in, and it was mostly Omega, who again shines here in this episode in that regard. So, I think we got very complacent with Sid, got very comfortable, and we're okay with, she's just, she's gruff and she's been through a lot, and that's just who her character is. But I think this one did kind of put some doubt. Now, there's, from a story-wise perspective, story perspective, I don't think they would ever do this. Like, I don't see them going back and making Sid like the bad person, right? We're going to get some character development from her, though, in that regard.
And this is something we even when we did the preview, the final hype show for the series, this is something that we wanted more of. We wanted to see what is it about Sid that where did she come from, and how she view the Bad Batch? Does she value that relationship at all? It seems like she does at times, but she doesn't. She has this really hard exterior shell that she doesn't want anybody to crack.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time that, or maybe not the first time, but I think this is the clearest example where we had a moment where you actually feel like that shell has got a crack in it, and maybe it's specific to Omega, but just in general, that these guys are willing to step up and help her when they really, aside from getting work from her, they don't owe her any kind of allegiance and loyalty.
Yeah.
And that's what Melenge kept saying, you be careful with your loyalty because it's not going to be returned. So clearly there's more history there that I think we're going to get. We need to get at this point. They shouldn't tease us like that and not give it to us, which, and to Star Wars credit, I think they've been better about that. They don't leave these hanging threads too much. especially this early on in the season. We'll probably go back to this. Or I almost guarantee we will at this point.
Right.
But I like that we got that. I mean, again, this is where you take a fun episode and you can tie just a few little threads in between that help you bridge to other content later on. We can slow roll Sid. That's okay. I mean, we've kind of been slow rolling already, but now we can slow roll this every few episodes. We can come back and revisit that there's a little something else, that based on whatever they're doing or whatever she wants them to do, And so I like that we got a smaller crew that enabled some of those opportunities for us to get at least a glimpse of what Sid's past looked like, and maybe what she's interested in the future and how she views the team right now.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, and again, because I don't want to come across as a shill. I actually want to bring up something that I think is worth discussing, just even briefly. But we talked about, there were a number of people that have already seen this series, the first 16 episodes or something like that.
Yeah, first 14, I think.
14 episodes, yeah. And the feedback was unanimous, at least from the folks that I followed at seeing them, and that was that this was not going to be a side quest mission of the week type formula that we got for a lot of in season 1.
Right.
We're 4 episodes in, and of the 4, 2 were kind of were connected, so that makes sense. But technically, 3 episodes in so far have all been, mission of the week kind of thing still. So we haven't broken away from that. Now, I'm not complaining. I think it's still fine. We've still got, we're only a quarter of the way through. We still got 12 more episodes left. But do you think there's a point in here where we kind of have to just break away from that? Or do you think we ride out this thing and it's just maybe parsed out a little bit it's spaced out a little bit more between now and these last 12 episodes?
I think when I think about the answer to that question, I think it comes back to what is going on within the context of those episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to have a mission of the week if it feels like it is progressing. If you have a thread to the entire story or through each episode, that you feel like you are developing the characters as you go along within that context.
Right.
Not everything has to be Rex and the rebellion, right? Or Cody and the rebellion, or all of that. But you have to see what will make it feel like a mission of the week is when you just have, I go do the mission, I don't really learn anything about any of the characters, and they all end up in the same place more or less that they started.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could argue here you have both Sid and maybe Tech to an extent. I think some people have oversold a little bit about what Tech's progression was in this episode. I liked Tech in this episode, by the way, but I don't know that we saw him grow or really, move the needle on his character or anything. But I think we did with Sid, and so I think that's what these episodes can still do. They provide the context for you to be able to have that scenario, but how you play those characters out is what matters most. And so while I would love to see deeper episodes as we go through, it's a long season that gets really heavy over a while. And this show is supposed to be about fun at the same time. And I think we're still seeing that with Omega, right? We talked about this in episode 1 and episode 2, where, Omega is still, how do you become a kid? The kaleidoscope. How do you still enjoy life, right? And you still see that enthusiasm come up, but we know that is going to be relatively short-lived in this series. So let's enjoy it while we can, right? I mean, these lighter episodes at the beginning of the season are pretty normal for that to be the case. So I think 4 episodes in, we're a quarter of the way through, but let's be patient. I think we're going to see this tide start to turn a little bit as we get into like episode 6 or 7, or maybe this every second or every third episode. We really feel like we've got something else that we can really hang our hat on, really dig into in a little deeper level. But, I'm okay with the mission context giving us the drive and the characters. But as soon as that breaks down, that enjoyment tends to break down with it.
Yeah. And I think we're on the same page. Like I would like to see them, they've got to give us something, because otherwise it does feel that way. And that's not really, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are people that would be just fine if this would really just turn into a kind of a mission of the week. But for us, for Star Wars fans, like the really hardcore stuff, we're hardcore folks. We really want to see, like you said, this character development. We want to see something building. We want to see progression, story progression, character progression. All these things matter to us, so that when we go into potentially season 3, or they pick this up with another series, or they decide to call back on something, it doesn't feel like these were throwaway episodes, but we're going to soon forget and never really think about going back and watching. Right. The good point, you brought up another good point earlier about that this was kind of this, more than anyone, it was probably Sid's moment in this episode. I did like the tech stuff, don't get me wrong, but it was, I think where people are conflating tech character progression is with just more insight into Tech. Like, who is he? Like, we don't know that. Like, it really did. I don't know that he didn't do anything we wouldn't have expected him to do.
Exactly.
About that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
This seems all in his wheelhouse. Everything from the way he was analytical about the races, the way he approached everything. His very first line is like, we're going to need more information than that. Like, we're not just going to go around. And they just ignored him and left him there, which I thought was hilarious. But, that's all within character of him. So he didn't progress, but we got to see him kind of shine. We got to see him use the skills that we knew he already had in this episode. And I don't think we've really, there've been moments, right, in season 1 here and there, but this was really all about him. And so that's very different than I think something like Sid's character progression or even Omega's. Again, we continue to see that common thread with Omega, and she's always trying to put other people first and getting these guys to basically fall in line and do those types of things. And all this is going to pay off later down the road, right? We know this is going to pay off at some point. It's just very Star Warsy of it to do.
I just thought it was so much fun though that Tech did have the moment to shine. He had the spotlight on him, and he did Tech stuff. He was him, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I could figure that. I think I could do that.
Yep.
So I'll do that. We have a need, see a need, fill a need, right? And he's able to do it, and he was very Tech about it. And I think we got to see him be rewarded in a little bit of adulation, which I think Tech probably doesn't get a whole lot of, right? And people calling his name and just getting that recognition that he gets lost in the team sometimes. I think Echo is probably the same way, right? Yeah. Wrecker's the beefcake, Hunter's the brains, and then you got Omega, who is a little of everything, and she's a kid.
Right.
So everyone's kind of unique, but they get lost in the shuffle a little bit. So for Tech to have that moment to shine and kind of have a moment of glory a little bit and have a bunch of people recognize him, I think that's kind of cool for him. I don't think it changes his character. He's not, moving the needle anywhere, but I think it's just a lot of fun for him to at least have that moment.
Yeah.
And we get to see him just do what he does and be awesome at it and come up with something unique, unique way to win through his analytical mind,
So one of our consistent lurkers is with us. This is Jeff. He says, Sid has always felt like a bit of a necessary cliche character for the batch to work off of. This episode finally got me invested in her. So I think that's important.
Great point. Yeah.
I think she probably needed some of that, right? Okay,
absolutely.
So let's continue to work through the episode, although we've already kind of touched on a number of things. But at the very beginning, we got Omega on the Jarek board playing with Meathead there for a while. This was just kind of a reminder, I think, for us that she does have that skill, although she really wasn't playing the strongest opponent in terms of like IQ. But
exactly, yeah.
But I do think that it was a reminder to us that I don't know. What do you think? It feels like this is going to have to come up. They set it up in season 1. This is pretty light, and I don't want to put too much weight into it, but it does feel like if we don't get something in the season where she's able to kind of display this natural ability that she has for strategy and command, right? She's kind of like a second coming of Thrawn or something. That's how I'm envisioning this going. But would you be upset if they didn't actually show us that?
I think I'd be fine with it, actually. I think that she's young and developing, so that she would have an aptitude for her, be able to learn it. I think is one thing. Is she going to be a Grand Admiral Thrawn type of character? I think that would be a little bit hard to get on board with, even though the clones are typically pretty exceptional, right, by design.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily need that. I like that she's able to do it. I think what we see with Omega a lot of times is she's leading with her heart more so than her mind. So I think that's the part that I'm more interested in, of saying, when does she, look at this more strategically? She's shown some signs of it in season 1,
mm-hmm.
And I think that's how she made the argument to Hunter, if I recall, in one episode.
Yep.
So when do we see that? Because I think we're not really seeing it here. They flirt with it, and then really she leads with her heart again. And I think that's an important characteristic of her, and I think that's okay. But again, did this reinforce her strategic, prowess or ability against Wrecker? No, not really. She's just kind of smirking and playing with him, I think, in general. But yeah, but it was still cool to see. Actually, the more interesting part of that scene that I thought was you're running up the power bill, which just means that we're starting to see times toughen for Sid's parlor, and that day where she said that this isn't going to last forever.
So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, things are starting to feel that crunch a little bit,
mm-hmm.
and so I think that was the part that I took, is that our days in the parlor really are numbered. And when I thought about the episode and started like, is this filler? Is this a mission of the week? Like, no, things are starting to get a little bit tougher, even though it's a bit subtle at this point.
Yeah, and I think I think there's not been enough attention placed on this idea of Nerf nuggets because honestly, I didn't know Nerf nuggets were a thing, and I think this really kind of changes my outlook on Star Wars. So I think it's the lead that's really being buried in this episode.
I think so too. I think we're going to go back, or we're probably going to spend the next 2 episodes with Hunter and just seeing, hey, what exactly is a Nerf nugget? Are they chicken fried? Are they fresh? Is it poop? I don't even know. I mean, it could be anything.
The logistics alone of like taking out and delivering Nerf nuggets across. Okay, that's enough. We'll stop talking about this.
Yeah, I mean, are they like? I mean, is this like Uber Eats now, or what?
I don't know. Nerf nuggets. It's a thing.
Could you imagine like your Uber Eats driver coming up in the Havoc Marauder?
Oh,
how badass would that be?
Yeah, it would be. The times would be really tough if they're doing that. Like they've just taken side missions and delivering for Uber Eats. We got the maybe it'll be fun line. I'm trying to remember. Was this the same scene that was in the trailer where she said that maybe it'll be fun?
Yeah, I think so.
Was it? Okay. Because I didn't know if that was just going to be a kind of a thing that she says, the rest of this season. But
that's the second time she's mentioned it. Yeah.
Yeah. She's all about the fun. So they had to Safatoma, brand new planet, another freaking desert planet. Like, I just don't understand. I guess it's the law of averages and odds.
At least it wasn't Tatooine.
At least it wasn't Tatooine. We're introduced to these riot races. So, which we talked about earlier on, but I mean, I guess it's pod racing, but with weapons, and the vehicles seem a little bit smaller, more techy, more nimble. They've got shields. It looks more like an obstacle course. I mean, I think you had a good point. It did feel like Mario Kart racing or a Wipeout or whatever it was. Super Bombad racing. How about that? Let's just go with that.
There you go.
Let's pull that one out of the vault there. But the racing itself, let's see. And then this element of civilians being killed at any point. Like, for all the people talking about, like, oh, nobody dies in the show, they don't kill, but they cold-blooded killed like this one poor bystander in the audience, just falls over dead, and everybody just goes right back to watching.
I love the disclaimer that the announcers do. As a reminder, we're not responsible for any bodily harm, dismemberment, death, whatever. You're on your own, basically.
Yeah.
Keep your head on a swivel. Like going to a baseball game, but with blasters, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. There's a number of lines from the announcers. Again, going back to what I said earlier, I thought this was a funny, well-written episode. He's got some great lines as well a little bit later when he's talking about Tech.
Tech? Is that his name? Who is this guy? Did I say that right? Is that it?
Yeah. But this whole thing's a death trap, right? To quote Wrecker on that one. But this does, so this is the first part of Sid that we get the background, meaning we know now that this was someplace she was at. Like, this used to be her old stomping ground. She was returning there. There were obviously people that know her. This might have been some kind of life that she led before she had her bar, casino, parlor, fight thing, whatever it is going on there. Do you think we'll get any more of this though? This feels to me like it's enough. Like, I don't know that we need to get into more of Sid's background. I think it's enough to establish she has a history. There are people there that know her as one person, and at some point she's going to have to make a choice about, is that really her or is she somebody new now?
Yeah, I don't know that we need a whole lot more. I mean, there might be something that's more serious that then opens up the floodgates of the backstory on Sid, but generally speaking, I think no. I think there's enough now where the characters have had enough exposure to some of this and these mysterious dealings of who she used to be or what she used to do. And they know she's got a sketchy background. I mean, no one runs the type of jobs that she's having them run without some kind of sketchy background with some of the characters that she's been up against, right?
Right. She's got to have those connections from somewhere.
Exactly. And these guys have been around enough. They see, underworld activity, and they know this is semi-underworld. And yeah, she's probably at or maybe just above board most of the time now. But at the same time, this is something that I think they'll come back and revisit. And it wouldn't surprise me if it was Omega that actually challenged her on some of this stuff. Like, you need to come clean with us. And again, now that she owes them one, this is an interesting concept too, of where, what is it that they're going to have to call that chip in, that favor in for her? You're on mute.
Sorry, still nursing a cold. I'll edit that out. So we get the introduction to Teo, and which we talked about as being Ben Schwartz.
You silly human.
Yeah. He had that spectacle spectator line that was in there.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. Wrecker thought that was funny too.
Did.
Yeah. And then we get Sindarin's Scaleback. Like I mean, it's Star Wars. You never know how they're gonna, name these characters. But that was not what I was thinking her name was.
Oh,
And then
I
we're
like the
introduced
first
to
name. Yeah, Siddhartha. That's kind of a cool first name, actually.
it's cool. I'm gonna make a WoW character named Sindarin before anybody else takes it. And then Ginny was Jenny. I don't. They never said his first name, but it was in the credits. Or did they say his first name? I don't remember them.
I think they
saying it.
did. Jeannie Malegi.
Genie. Okay.
Yeah.
They called him Malegi after that. So
Right.
But Ernie Hudson voicing him. So we learned that both of them were hustlers at some point in the past, right?
Right.
And so what the question I guess is, was this race personal? That's
I
what
think it became personal. Clearly, it did.
it certainly. Well, I think it did become personal. I think Tech was probably right. Like I think Sid wasn't being fully honest in terms of why there was this rivalry, other than I think it runs deeper than that. But
Yeah, I think maybe to start it wasn't. She was just there to make money. She had found a ringer, even though she kind of knew the opportunity was going to be there to run into Malegi and that they were going to go head to head. But I think for her, it just felt like it was just going to be on the track. She could keep her distance from it and just let it roll in and let that money roll in, right? And get that sweet dough, that she keeps talking about.
Yeah.
So I think that was the intent. I don't think she ever intended it to be personal. I think she did intend it to just be transactional. And I mean, clearly Teo is not exactly interested in anybody except himself and winning, right?
Right.
But I think, whenever he came into the picture and threw down the gauntlet and challenged her, clearly your pride and everything else come in and cloud your judgment and becomes personal. Now, was it that personal? I mean, it seemed pretty on the surface to me, but at the same time, I think it doesn't take much for it to become personal, especially if you've got a bit of bad blood or at least a bit of rivalry, maybe at the very least between the two. And if they ran in the same circles, you could probably come up with a dozen different ideas about what happened between them, how well they got along, probably were good associates for a while. Something probably went a little south between them. Clearly, Sid did something that betrayed him, or that maybe that's just what they did. And that's why maybe that's why some of this is there too. But so I think we'll get some idea though at some point what might have happened between them that comment came out later on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably it. I think it's just more about the background, probably that the aspect of being rivals at some point, and her feeling like she's got a ringer in Teo. So yeah, she's gonna take that bet. She's more confrontational, a little bit more confident in her ability to win a race at this point because of him. So I think it kind of all tracks. They get to the big race, and I kind of wasn't expecting this. It did take an interesting turn that Teo loses that first race. So that did give us some more time to spend on the course. Of course, this is also when Tech was assessing the track, and he's kind of watching and trying to understand like the ins and outs and really what would work and what's not. And he kind of had that right idea. Like, this is really more about defense than it is offense, which is essentially how he wins the entire race. Here's the thing that bothered me, though. Here's the thing that bothered me. They showed us the middle tunnel. They showed us the left tunnel, but no one ever took the right tunnel. And now I need to know what's down the right tunnel. All right, let's go on.
I mean, you can go write some fan fiction if you want. I mean,
I'm just kidding.
You should tweet Filoni and company and say, "Hey, really need to know.
I need to know
what was down the right side."
I don't understand. Why do they tease us this way? Like, this is what I lose sleep over. Like, okay, what was in the right tunnel? Like, are we ever going to find out? I don't know. It's FOMO. We got the Venom. Oh, what did you think about, what was that kid's name? that character Venom. What was his first name? Jason? No.
No, it wasn't Jason.
It wasn't Jason. That was, I had it written down here somewhere. Jet Venom, which maybe was Jet Lucas. Is that who they named him after?
Well, there was only one T in the name, and then Venom was with an I rather than an O.
Yeah. But it sounds like Venom.
Right.
Jet Venom. I like the name.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, that's a racer name, right?
Yeah. All right. Just want to comment on the name. Okay. And then post race, there was a couple good moments here. Found Teo where he's like holding up his, the remains of his droid body. There was the line that Sid said, "I didn't bring you two for the company." I thought that was pretty good. Like, hold on, listen, look at this guy, all about himself. I'm stuck in your mind. Get out of here. That was Jason again. There was And then so at that point, they double down. This is where Omega steps in and just, I don't know, kind of takes control of the situation, says, okay. I mean, she echoes what Wrecker says earlier on. We says double or nothing. It's essentially what she's done. Double or nothing. We'll pay you double, or, we lose Sid. But if you look at that scene, there are a lot of moments where you look at Sid's face and she's almost like shocked, humbled, floored that they're going to do this. Like, I think she was thinking, I'm done. Like, he's going to take me off, and that's the end of this whole thing. But yet it's Omega who steps forward and is like, no, we got to save our friend.
Well, if it was up to Tech and Wrecker, they probably would have been
right. Yeah, see you later. It's been fun.
Out. I mean, it's a calculation, right? And Tech's done the calculation, and I was like, well, no, the odds are not in our favor. Why would we do this?
Right.
And again, Wrecker kind of gets that emotional side, but he can't get kind of what's beyond right in front of his face. And Tech, is purely devoid of a lot of that emotional stuff. Maybe not entirely, but at least in this moment, the analytical side comes in. But I think but you're right. I think this is where we see a turning point for Sid, though, of understanding that she's recognizing that she has people, she has a crew. These aren't just guys that she's sending off on a mission. Like, they are developing a relationship.
Yeah.
And maybe friendship is a bit much, but I think Omega also probably feels like she owes Sid a lot.
Right.
Sid was hard on her, but really taught her a lot of stuff and opened some doors and gave her opportunity as well. And I think Omega really does treasure that and value that, because I think that's why she is such a part of the team, is because Sid helped her shoot, gave her opportunity, taught her how to do things,
Mm-hmm.
And rather than sitting on the sideline, actually treated her as if she was another member of the group beyond her years. And so I think she has a lot of positive things about Sid, because she's opened those doors for her. She feels very responsible to repay that in some way.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. She is there have not been a lot of parental figures in Omega's life, but I think given what happened in last season, even though it probably didn't feel like it for somebody like Omega, I think she kind of looks at her in that regard, in that light, in some ways. And so why wouldn't they save her? Like, it's just not even a question. We've got to do whatever we can to save her. We've got to do whatever we can to win this race. So they get signed up. There was the tail line of, I'm ready to, where are my arms and legs? It's not so much the listen to the timing that Ben Schwartz does with the line, I think, more than anything, that makes it that much more funny.
Right.
There was also a quote in there, I think it was Tech that said, this is not the first time she's required as her assistance due to her dealings with individuals of questionable integrity. It's a problematic pattern. He's referring to Infested, which is the 13th episode of season 1, where I forget, it was one of the Zabraks or one of the Horn dudes or whatever it was, had a mission or came to them, and she went to them that was the first time that she actually went to them and said, look, I need your help. And they were all questioning, like, why should we kind of do this?
Yeah, that was with the crime family, I think, right?
Yes. Yep. But we also, so in that whole kind of, they're talking about the old times, her and Malegi, right? About being hustlers, which we mentioned earlier. He talks about the real Sid. So it does sound like she's got some kind of a dark past, maybe isn't the same person that she is. She does say, I might surprise you. And this is where I feel like, okay, so to be clear, I do feel like they did it. They were trying, Deverorian, thank you, Dale. They were trying to, plant seeds of doubt in our minds about where her allegiance is, where her loyalty will ultimately lie. I think prior to this, like you said, she probably could still go both ways, even though she's had a working relationship with them. They've been on a number of missions, even together. I think it was probably, she could go either way. I think after this mission, though, I think I believe her. I do feel like she has changed. Now, if they're kind of following the tropes that happen with storytelling, there will come a moment where her loyalty is going to be tested, and she's going to have that pivotal moment of like, do I do this or not? And she's going to have to, again, if this is a good story being told, she's going to side with the Bad Batch, and because of this, right? She's going to return that favor at some point. But I think they did. It was enough, I think, for us to kind of see a little bit of doubt in our minds.
Yeah, I think she's getting there. And again, I think even at this point, and we've seen this throughout the rest of the season, last season, and even so far into this one, is that I think largely she was operating above board, but she's not above going below the board to get a job done, especially if there's a big payday. And if she doesn't have to ask too many questions and know anything about it, she can just like, look, I just don't ask questions. I just do the job and do it. I mean, granted, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
But so I think there's a part of her that's like, I want to be above board, but I also need money, and things are getting tough. And I think that's I'm right there with you. I think that rub is going to happen at some point very soon. And that's going to be the point where she has to make a call, especially if it becomes like when you get Omega and Echo wanting to do something more with the group and with any kind of resources that they have, and maybe with Sid's resources. I think that could be that internal conflict as well within the team, where she's got to make a decision that, and maybe she doesn't make the decision that we would prefer her to make, to go with the team or to, support what they're doing, and they feel like her loyalty is not with the team in general. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's paths there that you can go in and explore that I think are interesting, and they could do a really great job with that and give her that conflict. And of course, eventually we would expect her to make the right decision, because this is a show that's probably going to have her make the right decision at some point. I think that it really does help round her character out. And I think we are seeing that turning point now. I think it's important for us to start seeing that doubt and that her own emotions starting to come out. And especially at the end when she kind of lingers. I mean, you almost expected to see her eyes water. I don't know if Trandoshans can cry, but I mean, you kind of expected to see it at some point that, wow, this kid is willing to do this for me.
Yeah.
What am I willing, and just kind of the internal conflict of what am I willing to do for them? What am I willing to do for her? So
there was at this point they go through and they rebuild Teo, and they're getting ready for like the second kind of race. And this is where like it was, I'm trying to think, like this is a trope, and I couldn't think of other examples where this has happened, but his death was so unexpected and hilarious at the same time, or I guess his destruction, if you want to call it that, because he's a droid. But he's in the middle of saying, if you want to win out there, offense is the best. And then he just gets hit by one of these runaway pods. And the only one that came to mind was like, I know there are other ones. Maybe somebody in the chat will remember if you got any, but do you remember, have you ever seen Pulp Fiction when Marvin dies?
Yeah.
John Travolta turns around with a gun. He's talking to him and right. Doesn't mean to, but just kills him. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's so shocking that he dies so quickly. And it's almost comedic. It's very dark humor in that regard. This was that moment for Teo. Like he just out of nowhere is gone. So I'm trying to think if there were other examples of where this has happened, because I always find it funny.
I'm sure there's tons. Yeah.
For whatever reason.
But you're right. I mean, the comedic timing's got to be there. And I think with both the script as well as the voice acting, I think this is just a great opportunity or a great showing of Ben Schwartz. And again, it's very much a tribute to him and what he's been able to accomplish with his role. I think this is really cool.
He says, oh boy, I don't think he's going to be able to race. That's Wrecker. Yeah. And then his last lines are, I regret nothing, before it turns
I don't know that I understood what that meant, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, what he said, or that he was bad-mouthing Tech on the way, or what?
I don't know. I thought it was funny. I don't know what, yeah, you're right. I have no idea what it meant. It just, the fact that those were his last dying words.
Right. I had a feeling it was, no, I meant what I said, and I'm gonna die like on that hill, literally.
Yeah.
With what I said, and I don't take any of it back.
So I guess one of the more intriguing questions that I have comes in next, because this is where Tech steps in, right? He says, I will be the racer. He's kind of sitting there in his own, lost in his own mind, calculating everything, I'm sure, right? But then the question I have is, like, who did he do this for? Is he doing this for, because it doesn't come across as though he's doing this for Sid. Is he doing this for Omega because Omega wants this for Sid? Or is I
think some of it is they already made the commitment, and I think forfeiting, quitting is not really in the Bad Batch's wheelhouse. It's not really the part of their construct. I mean, strategic retreat, I guess maybe is a thing, but they've already committed to this, and he knows how important it is to Omega. And I think he's partially just curious if he can do it. He thinks he can. I think he probably knows he can, but he's like, this is something I'd actually like to try, just to see how well I could do it. He likes to figure things out. Kind of like when he was fixing the Sereno archive, the data archive, in one of the first episodes. So I think those types of things for Tech, he just likes doing. But again, they already made the commitment, and someone's life is on the line. You got to try. So it all lined up for him. He's like, yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I'm gonna fall into so I fell into the camp of he's doing this for Omega. Like, I was trying to get on board with him doing it for Sid, but like you said earlier, I think they're like, oh, well, it was good, fun, we'll see you later. But I think it means more if he's doing it for Omega, because it shows that, it shows this, even though he's not outwardly showing it. in his heart, we would know, I guess we would feel or interpret that, he knows how important it is to her. And if he can give that to her, then he's going to do his best to try to make it happen.
Well, and he's capable of it too, I think. So I think you could probably work all of that in together, and I wouldn't argue with you too hard about it. It's difficult to tell with Tech because he's just so straight laced about everything and straight faced.
It's hard to read him.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't tell. But you'd like to think that he probably defaults more to the analytical side than the emotional side of things. So
yeah.
But again, that there might be just some little piece up there, though, is an interesting idea, and I guess we'll see as the season goes on if that has a spark there that we get to actually have a little more light shown on it.
Mm-hmm. There's we get to the beginning of the second, third race, I guess at this point. They got some pretty cool names in here. The Mad Bomber. Let's see, we got Steel Claw, Vicious, the War Gnome. Really get that one. Quick Draw, the Trickster, Hyper Rod, which I thought was my favorite. And then Tech, finally Tech. Anything else in this guy? No. Guess he's a late arrival. Is that his name? Tech? Just Tech? And the crowd's like dead quiet, which is, again, really good stuff when that happened.
I just love the droid, though, the gunslinger. He's just doing the actual gunslinger motions. Right. I just got cracked up. I was like, this is great. Nothing like a protocol droid acting out.
I think there was 2 protocol droids in there.
And they were all droids except, no, that's not true. There were like 4 sentients, I guess, with Tech.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were a lot of droids, though. Yeah, but yeah,
there were a lot of droids.
Yeah, 2 3PO style droids, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so this is where we get into the race, and of course, all of his technical abilities and aspects really play out here, right? He starts to, there was another line that I wrote down here. It says, "You got to be in the front to win." Wrecker's telling him, and he says, "I know what I'm doing. It's called strategy." And then he responds back, "No, it's called losing," which I thought was really good. At one point, he drops all his weapons to kind of make him light, nimbler, more maneuverable. Again, more unorthodox, but more calculated risk that he's taking, knowing what he knows because who he is. And then he takes a shorter tunnel on the left-hand side. But again, I really wish I understood what was on the right side there. And of course, he wins the race. And the announcer, Tech, right? Tech wins. He'd still questioning whether or not that's this dude's name. And then he says that, are you surprised that he won? I thought that was kind of cool of Tech to say that, because in his mind, I'm sure there was zero doubt, right? He'd calculated every possible outcome of this.
It was cool watching him actually wave to the crowd, and you even had
even had
a little smirk. He actually somewhat smiled. It was it was out of character for him to actually feel. You could actually say, "Wow, this actually feels kind of good."
Mm-hmm. I want to save that. I have a question for. We're almost done here, but I have a question at the very end about that last particular scene. And then, of course, they go back to get Sid, and she does feel like she seems a little bit more uncomfortable when they're talking, that they went through all of that for her. Like, she seems uneasy about it all. And it could just be why
going people at all.
Yeah, or exactly. Now she feels indebted to them in some way, right? She's going to have to return this favor, maybe not. Or she feels vulnerable, like she's not used to opening herself up and letting people kind of save her. And
you can see it real quick too. She shuts it right down, like, don't worry, I'm good for it. And shoves past Tech, But yeah, you can definitely tell she was appreciative, though. That was some great flying goggles, or racing, whatever she was. But yeah, it's really, it was good to see that emotion out of her, and I think that self-doubt a little bit, or that uncomfortableness, I think for Sid is important to see, because we don't really get to see her or any kind of vulnerability very often, or really ever. And so it was really good, especially with this character in Malegi, that clearly something about that scenario just feels weird.
Yeah.
And so having her actually respond to that, and Tech was very matter of fact, though. "I guess I owe you." "Yes, you do."
Mm-hmm.
It was just okay.
And he's one that won't forget and will cash in at some point too.
Right.
But yeah, the last line of that loyalty is admirable, but with Sid, it doesn't always go both ways. Watch your backs. So, yeah, watch your backs would, I would presume at some point, again, she may be faced with a decision about giving up the Bad Batch or not. Whether it's, the risk of losing her own life, I guess in the extreme, or it could be, losing the parlor or the bar, whatever she's got, right? Somebody's coming to her. She's going to have to make a decision about which one. And I think she'll side with the Bad Batch, like I said earlier, but I think that we're going to see that here at some point.
That's the personal conflict. This makes the shows worth watching.
Yeah. So the question I have though about the race. So I don't know to what scale this race is being televised or holographic wise. I don't know what that is. I want that word. But
Is it on the HoloNet? Can everybody?
is it on the HoloNet? Yeah, because
who
now
might see it?
who might see this? Because I mean,
Right.
they're all screaming his name, Tech. I mean, he's got a very distinct look. He didn't change his look from season 1 that much.
No, they
He's-
don't really mask who they are very well, do they?
No, they still don't.
There's no
I mean,
concept of undercover.
well that we joked about in season 1. Like, guys, you're supposed to be undercover. You're wearing everything you had. You've even got that dang tattoo on your face. Put a mask on or something. But they're not. So they're out in the open now, right? I mean, I'm just thinking if there's a way to kind of start the path for somebody like Rampart to kind of follow them or catch up with them, this may be a way. This could be it, right? Seeing him on the news, or somebody gets wind of it, or I don't know, somebody on a Star Destroyer was watching television one night, then runs it up the chain, and they've got a lead that goes back to that planet. Right. And then from there, they can backtrack, and maybe they go to Malegi, and he's the one that turns them over and says, oh, yeah, there was Sid, and you can find her on Ord Mantell. And there you go. The Empire's showing up at the door at that point.
It's always very possible that there's some sympathizer in this crowd. But again, sometimes the Empire doesn't really care about these backwater worlds and what they're doing necessarily, unless there's a resource to exploit or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know if this planet has any kind of importance to it, or if it's just a Canto bite of racing or something like that, So it'd be interesting, though. I mean, I agree with you, though. This is an opportunity that if the showrunners want to go this route, they very much could say that this is how we get a lead on them and where they're actually hiding out, and start to progress that storyline here in the next couple of episodes, that we're onto them and we've got this lead, and start to feel that impending doom coming, and start to force their hand at what they need to do and what next steps look like. And of course, this whole arc with Sid, making her make a decision sooner than maybe she thinks that she's ready to make it, or sooner than she expects to.
So where do you think this goes from here? Like, the next episode is called Entombed. Do you want to venture any guesses into, are these connected in any way? This does feel like it's kind of a standalone with the the natural threads that we've talked about that'll probably play out a little bit later, but
I'm actually not really sure what Entombed might mean. I mean, I don't know if this is something that we're going to go back to. Are we going to flip flop? Are we going to go back to a Crosshair, or maybe even back to a Cody? Or is this something where we've got another mission and it's just something with, or is it just another mission, that type of thing? So I'm actually not really sure. I think this is probably the first time we've got something where we're not really entirely have a good lead on where we think we're headed next, because it could really mean a bunch of different things. Do you have an idea?
Well, I mean, the word itself would, I mean, it means tomb, like somebody that's been buried or a tomb somewhere, right? So what was really playing with my mind, and I don't know that I came to any good solid conclusions, is who would they be looking for? Like, what kind of a tomb, and why would they be going to a tomb? They've talked about the series this season, I should say, more than season 1, was really leaning into borrowing from a lot of different other genres. This was kind of a callback to the Phantom Menace. The first 2 episodes, we talked about all the Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of references that were there. Maybe they go back to something similar again here with Entombed, and it's kind of an archaeological type thing. They're going to some
This could be the monster. This could be the monster episode too, right?
Very true. Could be. We haven't had a monster of the week yet, which we know we're probably going to have. But I mean, I'd like to see.
We know we have something, right? Because you got the big beast.
True.
And so this is much like you said, archaeology. They uncover something, they wake it, and it's now loose. So maybe this is the episode that we're getting there.
So, but yeah, it does feel like, and then after that, it's Tribe. So this could be another standalone. I hate to call it that, but maybe not necessarily carrying the weight of the main kind of arc and story through that's going on. Right.
And then Tribe, I mean, you get to episode 6, right? And you start to feel like, okay, we're getting to the midway point. We're going to have a little miniature arc here to get us to that halfway point. And kind of that mid-season, we won't have a mid-season finale. I don't think we really did last season, did we? I'm trying to remember what it was, but you don't necessarily need one, but you have something that leads up to this fulcrum point, for lack of better words. Just this transitional moment to get you into that the back half of the series. So again, yeah. So this one might be very much another standalone, but
Yep.
what to see what comes of it and who's involved with it.
Right. Yeah. So I guess to kind of wrap up, a very funny episode, very fun episode. Technically speaking, again, they were just killing it on all levels there.
I didn't
And
really
we
notice
got
music though this episode as much.
no, that's a good point. We usually talk about that. The only time it really stood out for me was when the race was happening. It
Yeah.
did get more into like this techno kind of sound. And I hate to bring up Wipeout if anybody's ever played that game. It was on the PlayStation originally and kind of they had a lot of iterations since then, but it did kind of call back to something like that, which I think made sense. Again, it Kevin Kiner did the music for this one too, and I can't praise him enough because he does have a way to work outside the proverbial box of what we know and feel to be Star Wars music, but yet still kind of be connected to it, right? I didn't feel lost in this or I felt displaced in any way.
I meant to go back and listen because in Phantom Menace, you made the connection of the parallels there. Throughout the pod race in Phantom Menace, there was a large part of that race. There was no music.
No
It was
music.
just sound, right?
Yeah.
Until we got to the part where Anakin's ship starts to break.
Yep.
After Sebulba gets it. So I
To
think
build the
I
drama and suspense. Yeah.
exactly. So I'd have to go back and listen to see if they did that parallel or not. But I didn't even think about it actually when I was listening to it. But I just noticed that the music was very subdued. But there was and maybe it was because the dialogue was so engaging in this one, and it was so funny and it was so entertaining that it was a not even a secondary thought. It was just it was in the background and it probably worked well enough. But it was not something that really was front and center. And I think for an episode like this, you don't really need that as much because I think that enhances it. But really, everything is in the moment, right? Everything is in the sounds around you, the sounds of the racers, the different the comms and the beeps and everything else going on. I think those are the things you want to notice, not necessarily music. The music will just kind of, it gives you like the encapsulation of the moment, but it's not the moment itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly how I would phrase it the same way based on what I heard. There was only one moment, and I forget, it escapes me right now, but there was one moment where something dramatic happened and the music either got louder or it was just a timing thing, but it definitely kind of went front and center. But that was fine because it worked. That was the whole point of it. But otherwise, it was there. It was in the background. It was ambient. It was setting the mood, if you will, but not in our face like we've seen with some of the other stuff.
Right.
So it was me. I said it's obviously subdued. Nice. Is that like just not the perfect name to come in with that? So, okay. Well, we're going to end the episode there. I want to thanks to everybody that came out. Another huge crowd tonight to kind of break down this fourth episode. And we'll be back in a few days to talk about Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, we had some, speaking of people did you get everybody's name? Because at one point there were some people popping in and you were talking.
I'm on it, man.
All right. I don't want to tell you how to do your job. So.
Well, if I missed anybody, my sincerest apologies. But I've actually been really good about not missing people, I think, lately.
Right.
Jonathan, JJ Skywalker, Nase, Rapos, Sky, Dale, Hard Counter, Steph, Jason, Lauren, Rob, Jeff, Jorge, obviously subdued. Everyone, thank you so much for coming out. Again, if you're listening to this, cantinacast.com/YouTube. We would love it if you'd subscribe to the channel, hit the notification so you can come join us, participate in the chat. It's a lot of fun. We get a lot of great comments. We feature them on the screen as well. So we'd love for y'all to come out and interact with our crew. It's really cool every time we log on, seeing people say hi to one another. The typical crew's there. It's really becoming more of a community of sorts, and seeing that engagement's always really exciting for us. And it's something we love to feature on the screen. And again, it's kind of funny moments. We apologize if they come across as a bit insider or on live stream only type of thing. Not our intent, but it is a lot of fun for us. It keeps things fresh. So we'd love for you to come out and check it out. cantinacast.com/YouTube.
Yep. Okay. I think.
All right, and speaking of Jason, so Halloran is our buddy Jason, Smoking and Drinking in Space. Actually, they were kind enough to invite me onto Smoking and Drinking in Space this past weekend, and that episode will come out eventually whenever Jason decides to edit it. But we were talking about Total Recall, the 1990s Arnold Schwarzenegger version of Total Recall. So it was a lot of fun. So huge thanks to them. So when it comes out, or don't even wait for it to come out, go check out Jason and Rob on Smoking and Drinking in Space. They're great friends of ours. And we love them to death. So yeah, go support their shows. They're a lot of fun. They also do another one called Smoking and Drinking in Capes. Space, focus on sci-fi shows and movies, and they break them down and stuff. And then they do Capes that are more superhero oriented as well. So go give those a listen. Great guys. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, Smoking and Drinking Space is a great show. Just slightly better than their podcast logo, but otherwise, yeah, they're pretty good. Okay,
I heard they paid a fortune for that logo.
They paid nothing for that logo. I can tell you firsthand. All right, with that, we'll see you guys here in just a few days for the Patreon episode, and next week we'll come back with even more Bad Batch to talk about.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.